There exists a silent language beneath words, a language spoken not by the tongue, but by the soul. When someone truly loves you, they begin to mirror you, not deliberately, not strategically, but unconsciously. This is not the mimicry of a manipulator, nor the echo of someone seeking favor. It is far more ancient, more primal, an instinctive resonance between two psyches drawn toward a deep and invisible harmony. You may notice it in the smallest gestures. They sit when you sit, their head tilts when yours does, their breath synchronizes with yours, as if the rhythm of your being orchestrates the quiet music of their own. Their laugh begins to sound like yours. Their vocabulary slowly weaves your words into their own. These are not performances. They are patterns emerging from the deep waters of the collective unconscious, where souls that recognize each other begin to dance the same unspoken choreography. This kind of mirroring does not originate in the conscious mind. It is not a calculated act. It happens in the space where persona ends and the shadow begins, the threshold where the ego loosens its grip and the true self begins to surface. In such moments, the individual is no longer operating from the facade constructed for society. Instead, they are moved by something deeper, a felt sense of connection, an inner pull toward wholeness, an intuitive knowing that this other person is somehow part of them. In the psychological sense, this unconscious mirroring is a clue that your presence has activated something in the other. You have stirred the inner archetypes, the anima or animus, the image of the ideal other that lives within each of us. Love, then, is not merely affection or attraction. It is recognition, a seeing that bypasses logic and speaks directly to the inner world. And in that seeing, the self subtly adjusts, reshapes, reorganizes in order to come closer, not out of need, but out of resonance. What is remarkable is that this mirroring can happen even in silence. You do not need to speak. You do not need to explain yourself. The person simply leans into your experience, sensing your emotional weather without needing a forecast. They don't ask what's wrong when you're quiet. They simply become quiet with you. They don't need to be told how to comfort you. They intuit it because the boundaries between their internal world and yours have grown porous. Unconscious mirroring is evidence of a shared psychic field. The distinction between self and other begins to blur, not in a way that leads to enmeshment or loss of self, but in a sacred overlap where two distinct souls meet and move in mutual awareness. This is the kind of connection that cannot be faked or forced. It is not taught in books, nor rehearsed in front of mirrors. It emerges when two people are open enough to be changed by one another, when their inner lives begin to converse without the interference of spoken language. There is a silence that feels like abandonment, and then there is a silence that feels like sanctuary. The difference lies in the presence that holds it. When someone truly loves you, their silence is not a void. It is a vessel. It does not neglect, but protects. It shields the sacredness of what is too deep for language. This is not the silence of distance, nor the silence of withdrawal. It is the silence of reverence, the silence of a soul that understands that certain emotions, certain wounds, certain thresholds of experience cannot and should not be spoken of too soon. Love, when authentic, does not rush to speak. It does not fill the air with noise in an effort to fix or control. It understands that healing does not come from interruption, but from stillness. When someone loves you, they often grow quiet, not because they are disconnected, but because they are attuned. Because they are sensing deeply that you are undergoing something interior, something archetypal, something that cannot be solved but must be endured. In those moments, their silence becomes a form of spiritual holding. They are not trying to change your experience. They are creating a container for it. They are allowing your psyche to unfold on its own terms, in its own time. It is a sacred waiting, a silent vigil, a kind of psychic companionship that asks for nothing but offers everything. This protective silence is not passive. It is a powerful act of love. It requires restraint. It demands presence without intrusion. It calls the ego to step aside so the soul can lead. For most, this kind of silence is uncomfortable. It lacks the reassurance of words, the illusion of control. But to the one who has learned to love deeply, this silence is alive. It is full of listening, full of sensing, full of respect for the complexity of your interior world. Imagine the gaze of someone who does not interrupt your weeping, who does not hand you solutions when your grief arrives, who does not panic when you retreat inward, but waits patiently on the edges of your silence, knowing that something sacred is happening in that space. They do not interpret your stillness as rejection, nor your quiet as disconnection. They understand that your soul is at work, and they do not try to steal that moment from you. Such love does not speak unless the soul invites it. It does not prod, it does not perform, it does not demand explanations. Instead, it offers a kind of invisible guardrail, an energetic boundary that says, "You are safe here. Even in your silence, even in your struggle, I will not abandon you." Protective silence is the opposite of indifference. It is a kind of wordless advocacy. The loved one becomes a guardian of your vulnerability, not by overpowering it, but by honoring its need to unfold without exposure. This is where true intimacy resides, not in constant declarations, but in the quiet courage to witness another person without needing to intervene or interpret. It is in this stillness that transformation begins. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, in the subterranean levels of the psyche where change happens not by force, but by acceptance. And the one who loves you does not disturb this alchemy. They simply remain. They become a quiet anchor in the storm, a presence that does not flinch when your shadow shows itself. Chaos reveals the truth of all things, not in the polished light of comfort, but in the shattered mirror of the unexpected. It is easy to offer love when skies are clear, when the water is still and the winds gentle. But the presence that remains steady when everything unravels, that is the mark of something deeper than affection. It is the signature of a soul that has tethered itself to yours beyond convenience, beyond condition, beyond comprehension. In moments of crisis, when the world seems to fracture, externally or within, you may notice the quiet disappearance of many. Some cannot bear the discomfort of your suffering. Some will turn their gaze away, not out of cruelty, but because your storm reminds them of their own. But there are a rare few, perhaps only one, who do not flee. They do not arrive with solutions or polished wisdom. They do not need to be the hero of your narrative. Instead, they remain. Their presence is not loud. It is not performative. It is often so subtle, so unspoken, that it can be missed by those who only look for dramatic gestures. But if you slow down, if you pay attention, you will feel it. You will feel it in the steadiness of their eyes when yours are wild with fear. You will feel it in the way they hold space for your anger without needing to soothe it, in the way they witness your tears without recoiling, without reaching prematurely to dry them. They are not here to rescue you because they understand a profound psychological truth. You are not broken. You are becoming. The chaos you are in is not the end of your story, but the alchemical fire through which your true self is being refined. And so, they do not try to silence your pain or redirect your despair. They hold vigil beside it, not above it, beside it. There is something mysteriously sacred about this kind of presence. It doesn't just touch the surface of your life. It reaches into the architecture of your psyche and says, "Even here, in this ruin, I will not leave you." It is the echo of something ancient, something eternal. It is as though your suffering has summoned a guardian, not a protector in the traditional sense, but a witness, a soul who can stand in the tension without collapsing, a soul who can sit with your fragmentation without needing you to quickly reassemble. Such presence is not motivated by reward. It is not trying to earn your gratitude. It is not a transaction. It is a vow, unspoken, psychic, elemental. This person has, in some unexplainable way, intertwined their being with yours, and when your internal world begins to quake, they do not run, they anchor, not because they are stronger than you, but because they are willing to be with you as you remember your own strength. To love someone in their chaos is to see the soul beneath the symptoms, to hold on to the essence of who they are when even they have forgotten. It is to become a mirror not of how they appear, but of who they truly are. And it is this mirror, silent and enduring, that becomes a path back to wholeness, not forced, not demanded, simply reflected consistently until you are ready to look again. It is in this kind of steady presence that healing happens, not always instantly, not always visibly, but profoundly. Because the psyche, when witnessed without judgment, begins to trust, and when it trusts, it begins to unfold, and when it unfolds, it remembers. There is an attention that observes, and then there is an attention that consecrates. The former sees what is apparent, the latter perceives what is essential. When someone truly loves you, their attention becomes sacred. It does not merely glance, it witnesses. It does not hover at the surface of your being, collecting facts and impressions. Instead, it descends into the quiet details, the subtle shifts, the unspoken realms where the soul reveals itself in whispers. In a world that is noisy, distracted, and increasingly desensitized, sacred attention is rare. It is not the attention that listens only to respond. It is the kind that listens with the entire body, with the eyes, the breath, the stillness between words. It is the kind of attention that does not require performance. You do not need to exaggerate your joy for it to be noticed, nor dramatize your sorrow to have it honored. You can simply be, and still they see. This form of attention is not learned through etiquette or charm. It arises from the inner life of the one who loves. It is born of their capacity to dwell within themselves, to sit in silence with their own depths. For it is only from that depth that one can enter the mystery of another. The one who pays sacred attention to you is not attending to you as an object to decode or fix. They are entering into relation with you, soul to soul, without agenda, and in this relational space, something profound begins to occur. They begin to notice things about you that even you have forgotten. They remember your preferences not because they wrote them down, but because your essence left an imprint on their psyche. They feel the shift in your energy before you say a word. They ask the right questions not because they've rehearsed them, but because they have been listening to your silences. This attention becomes a mirror, but not a harsh one, not the kind that exposes and critiques. Rather, it reflects back your wholeness, even in your fragmentation. It reveals the you that lives beneath your masks, the you that existed before the world asked you to be something else. To be seen in this way is no small thing. It is not flattery, it is not fascination, it is devotion. Sacred attention is not about control or curiosity. It does not pry, it waits, it watches, it receives, it moves like water, flowing into the spaces you did not think anyone could reach. The wounds you carry in silence, the dreams you buried out of fear, the fears you dress in confidence. Sacred attention touches these places without intrusion, without analysis, and somehow, in that quiet recognition, those parts begin to soften, begin to breathe, begin to reawaken. There is a psychic nourishment that comes from being attended to in this way. You begin to feel safe in your own presence again, because someone else has met you there without judgment. They have shown you that you are not too much, nor too little. that your contradictions are not obstacles to love, but invitations, that your pain does not repel intimacy, it deepens it. And as this sacred attention continues, without demand or distraction, something shifts in the dynamic. You begin to offer it back, not out of obligation, but because your own soul has been stirred awake, and now you too are capable of seeing, not just glancing, not just hearing, but truly perceiving. It becomes a shared field of awareness, where two psyches encounter each other with reverence, and every glance, every pause, every gesture becomes a symbol, a sacred sign that says, I am here with you beneath the surface where it matters most. There is a kind of love that does not simply observe your emotions, it feels them with you. It does not stand at the edge of your experience, watching, analyzing, or offering consolation from a distance. It steps into your inner world and allows your joy to lift its spirit, your sorrow to bend its heart, your fear to tremble through its bones. This is not imitation. It is not empathy as performance. It is something far more intimate, more mysterious. It is emotional resonance, a phenomenon where one soul vibrates in harmony with another, not by choice, but by connection. This resonance is not a conscious decision. It arises from a deep psychic entanglement, an invisible thread that binds two people in a shared emotional frequency. It is as if their nervous system has tuned itself to yours, like two instruments in a forgotten orchestra finding the same note without instruction. You speak no word of your sorrow, yet they grow quiet beside you. You utter no sentence of joy, yet they begin to smile as if your laughter has stirred something ancestral in them. This form of resonance cannot be manufactured. It is not the sympathy of the casual observer or the concern of the well-meaning stranger. It is a visceral response, a soul-level mirroring that defies logic. It is what happens when love penetrates the psychic boundaries between two individuals, not to dissolve them, but to soften them, so that each can feel the interior weather of the other as if it were their own. To be truly resonated with is to be felt in places you did not even know were crying out. There is no need for explanation, no requirement to defend or articulate. The person simply knows. They walk into a room and sense what has changed before you say a word. They notice the slight tremor in your hand, the way your shoulders fold a little tighter, the sudden light behind your eyes. They do not ask, "What's wrong?" out of obligation. They ask because their own spirit is already feeling the tremble in yours. But this resonance is not just about pain. It is also about joy. It is the uncontainable smile they wear when you succeed, not out of pride, but because your triumph feels like their own. It is the awe in their gaze when you are lost in your element, when you're speaking your truth, or creating, or healing, or simply being the fullness of yourself. They are moved by your aliveness, not because they need it, but because it reminds them of something forgotten within themselves. What makes this kind of love sacred is that it does not try to steal your experience. It does not make your pain about them. It does not center itself within your joy. It remains beside you, not engulfing, not escaping, but attuned. This is a delicate dance, requiring deep psychological maturity. For to resonate with someone's emotions without collapsing into them, or trying to rescue them, demands a clear sense of self and a reverent respect for the sovereignty of the other. In this space of mutual resonance, something transformative begins to unfold. You no longer feel alone in your emotions, but neither do you feel dependent. Instead, you feel met, not fixed, not soothed in haste, but seen, heard, and accompanied at the frequency of your soul. Your nervous system, long braced for abandonment or misunderstanding, begins to soften. Your inner child, long hiding in silence, begins to emerge. You begin to believe, without needing proof, that perhaps love is not about being understood in words, but about being felt in presence. This is not romantic idealism. This is a reality that unfolds only in relationships where both souls have dared to venture into their own depths. For only those who have sat in the darkness of their own being can recognize and hold the darkness of another. Only those who have honored their own wounds without shame can resonate with the wounds of someone else without retreating. And only those who have learned to feel their own emotions fully can offer that gift to another, not as a technique, but as a way of being. True love does not arrive on a stage. It does not ask for applause. It does not perform. When someone truly loves you, their sacrifices are invisible, quiet, often unnoticed, not because they are small, but because they are genuine. There is no show, no score being kept, no ledger of good deeds to be called upon later in argument. There is simply a quiet rearrangement of their world to make room for yours. This is a sacred kind of sacrifice. It is the kind that emerges not from obligation, but from soul alignment. It is the act of putting aside something personal, not because they are losing themselves, but because they see you, not just your outer form, but your essence, and they have chosen, without words, to prioritize your well-being as if it were their own. Not always, not constantly, but consistently, naturally, with a rhythm that feels less like duty and more like devotion. You may not even notice it at first. The way they adjust their day so they can listen to yours. The way they remember the things that matter to you, even when you forget them. The way they carry the weight of what burdens you, not because you asked, but because their love made it unbearable to watch you carry it alone. These are not the kinds of things that are spoken of in poems or posted on screens. They do not sparkle. They do not entertain. But they are the heartbeat of real love. There are no witnesses to this kind of sacrifice. It happens in the silent space where intention lives, in the inner world where choices are made, not for recognition, but for resonance, for harmony, for the quiet survival of something sacred between two people. And because it is done without performance, without spectacle, you may never fully know how much they gave, but your body knows, your psyche feels it. You sense the safety, the stability, the unsaid protection surrounding you, and something in you relaxes, trusts roots. This kind of sacrifice is difficult for the ego. The ego wants credit. It wants to be seen, thanked, admired, but the soul does not. The soul gives because it is in its nature to give, because it has perceived, deep within, that to support the unfolding of another person's being is not a burden. It is a participation in something larger than the self, a union, a mystery, a sacred task that cannot be measured or repaid. And so, the person who truly loves you will often be the one doing without you noticing. They make space in their silence so you can speak. They delay their dreams so you can explore yours. They carry unspoken grief because they know you are too tired to hold more. And they will never tell you because telling would turn the sacred into the transactional. Love like this does not announce itself. It breathes beside you like a second heart, beating in sync, never asking to be heard. These hidden sacrifices are not always grand gestures. Often, they are small. So small they disappear into the fabric of the everyday. The text they didn't send because they knew you needed space. The word they didn't say because it would have hurt more than healed. The job they turned down to stay close. The anger they swallowed because they sensed your fragility in that moment. These are not acts of martyrdom. They are not suppressions of self. They are choices made by someone who knows that love is not the freedom to do whatever you want. It is the willingness to do what nurtures the other, even when it costs. But again, this is not codependence. This is not the dissolving of boundaries in the name of affection. No, it is the mature sacrifice of someone who has integrated their own shadow, who has faced the inner child's hunger for attention and applause, and chosen instead to give quietly. To love in the dark, to support without being celebrated. And the beauty of sacrifice without performance is that it creates an energetic bond far deeper than the surface-level displays we've been conditioned to believe are signs of love. These quiet acts build a foundation that cannot be seen but is always felt. They create a container in which your psyche is allowed to rest, to grow, to falter, to heal. And because they ask nothing in return, they return everything. There is no louder declaration of love than the quiet, private revolution that takes place within someone when they are touched. Not by your appearance, your accomplishments, or even your charm, but by your being. When love is true, it does not remain on the surface of mannerisms or habits. It moves inward. It begins to carve, to soften, to dismantle, and to reconstruct the very architecture of a person's soul. This is the mark of real love, not in what they do for you, but in who they begin to become in your presence. We often think of transformation as something dramatic, an awakening, a sudden decision, a grand reinvention. But the transformation that stems from love is usually slower, subtler. It happens in the unseen places of the psyche, where old wounds have calcified, where ancestral patterns have taken root. And without force, without pressure, something begins to shift. When someone truly loves you, not with possession, not with projection, but with presence and reverence, their inner world begins to reorganize, not to impress you, not to win you, but because the connection has stirred something sacred in them, an invitation to grow, to evolve, to become more whole. They may begin to confront their own shadows, not because you asked, but because love has made denial unbearable. They start to listen to their inner voice, not to escape, but to understand what parts of them are unworthy of the love they are now giving and receiving. And so they begin the inner work, the real work, the often painful excavation of the self. Not for reward, not for validation, but because love has planted a seed and the soul cannot help but water it. This is how you know the love is true. It makes them want to become more true. Not to abandon themselves for your approval, but to shed what no longer aligns with the deeper self they are discovering through you. You become, in a sense, a mirror not of their current state, but of their highest possibility. And they move toward that image not because of you, but because of what your love has revealed within them. And this transformation is rarely obvious. It doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like falling apart, like facing parts of themselves they have long avoided, like questioning everything they once thought defined them. But beneath the chaos, beneath the mess, something real is forming, something new, something sacred. True love creates a psychological container in which transformation is not only possible, it becomes inevitable, because the psyche is never indifferent to what is sacred. It cannot remain unchanged in the presence of the numinous. And when love is real, when it is deep, resonant, and salt heather, it is numinous. It opens a doorway within the individual, a passage into territory they may have feared or ignored, and suddenly they begin to walk through it. You may begin to notice small shifts. The language they use becomes more careful, not out of fear, but out of respect. The decisions they make begin to account for something more than themselves. The defenses they once wore like armor begin to fall away, and in their place you see vulnerability, not weakness, but truth exposed. You witness a softness returning to places hardened by life. You witness a strength rising from places they once abandoned. And you know, this is not a performance, this is not a phase. This is the slow birth of the authentic self, awakened by love and shaped by its presence. This transformation may not always be easy for them. It may not even always be visible to you, but if you pay close attention, not with your eyes, but with your intuition. You will feel it. You will feel the way they now speak from a deeper place, the way they pause before reacting, the way their very energy shifts in your presence, as if their soul is aligning with something more whole, more honest, more free. Because love, when real, is not just a feeling, it is a psychic force. It disrupts, it reorganizes, it calls forth. And the one who truly loves you will not remain the same, not because you demanded change, but because love revealed what was possible. And once the soul sees what it can become, it can no longer pretend to be asleep.